Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Dr. Martin Trevino on the line, and he's a chief scientist and an independent consultant. Marty, welcome to the show.
No, thank you, Adam. Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here.
All right, Marty. So big topic today, and I'm really excited to have you on the line to get into it. So really the future of AI and data-driven decision making. So a lot of words in there, and we talk about AI as a buzzword, and we talk about obviously wanting to make data-driven decisions. A lot of business owners and executives watch this, and I'm excited to get into the weeds with on this topic with you because you got a lot of insight. But before we go further in that, I'd like to start this episode the way that we start them all with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Marty, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Marty, what mission matters to you?
Yeah, well, my mission, my passion in life is improving data-driven decision making at the highest levels. In my lifetime, I want to be a force to alter the sensory experience in data-driven decision making. It's been very couple dimensional. We hear people say numbers to us. We see numbers. We see visual analytics, on screens. But there's so much more. All the human senses, all that we are, all that we bring to the table, the richness as human beings. A lot of that's left on the table. It is my passion and goal in life that as we advance analytics, as we advance machine learning, as we integrate our cyber physical world, if you will, right? I think Zuckerberg's metaverse, but a little more sophisticated. Can we alter the sensory experience in analytics to further decision making?
Man, I love your passion for this, Marty. It just sucks me in, and I know my audience is going to get sucked in as well. I want to go further back into your career, maybe like how did you get on this path to where you're at today? Like, where did all this begin for you?
It began as a very young man. I come from a long line of men who have served their country. My father was a U.S. Marine for many years. His father before that was also a government officer, and we trace our lineage hundreds of years, and it's always been a thing. I was a young man, and I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I thought flying, fighter planes would be really awesome. But had a minor hearing loss and couldn't do that. So I went to school and said I'm going to get an education, but all the time figuring out a way that I could serve, and did fairly well in school, and stumbled into the U.S. intelligence agencies, and they helped fund my education. And about 17 years ago, I wound up serving as a United States intelligence officer within the National Security Agency of the United States, or the NSA. And if you don't know, the NSA, among the world's most formidable spy agencies, but they also guard information in the United States. They are responsible for guarding, for information assurance for the Department of Defense and all, and many other parts of the government they assist with. So I went to school, getting hired, and went on to be an American cyber spy. And a few years ago, I left that. It was time for different and other things. But they gave me a trade. They sent me to school. I eventually got a doctorate in analytics and decision science. And so I led their mission analytics team globally, so showing analytics. It just kind of evolved over a lifetime. Why the central question that bothered me is, why do some people make decisions with data so well, and at other times absolutely ignore it? Right. And we've all seen this. We've all seen this, whether you're in commercial space, whether you're in the nonprofit, or whether you're sitting in a room full of generals and admirals. And you saw some poor junior analyst, prepares all this data and analytics, and it's on the board, and they will go through it. And the senior decision maker in the room, right, whether there's a COO or a 4-star general, looks at it and says, I hear what you're saying, Marty. I see the data. I get it. But my gut is telling me to do X.
Yeah.
And we're going to go with my gut. All right, everybody, get on
you're
board.
Like,
and you're sitting there as a data scientist saying, wait a minute, what happened? All the data says this, and we're going with your gut. How does that work, right? But it turns out that when you look at that, so call that decision science, right? A little different than data science. Decision science looks at it from the human perspective, and that's really the neuroscience enters into it. How is the human brain structured? How do those structures, those systems function in relation to each other? How do they cooperate? How do they compete? But you also get into the psychology of individuals, right? One's cognitive ability. Some people have higher IQs, different experience, their state and trait psychology. It all comes into this beautifully complicated ball of spaghetti that it becomes very difficult to untangle. How is it that we sometimes make beautifully data informed decisions, and how is it sometimes that we don't? And it translates into artificial intelligence as well. Why is it that sometimes we accept the recommendation of the AI and sometimes we say, forget it, I don't care what it says, we're going with my gut? So a lifetime of wondering, of deep questions, some time of service with our country, and now I act independently and just work with organizations and individuals when they say, we want. I work largely in the realm of risk and particularly cyber risk, but making very risky decisions. How do we make organizationally and individually better data-driven decisions, especially very risky ones? Long way around.
No, this is great. And I think it sets the stage for the conversation very well. I mean, your background, your pedigree, some of the things in your career that have led you to where you're at today and helping organizations make better decisions. So I want to start this conversation kind of from the basic side of things, and then we'll progressively go further into the topic. But I guess let's start kind of at the highest level of how AI relates to this to making data-driven decisions. I know a lot of people hear, the word AI and how it can be used and how it can be implemented. And I don't think there's an organization, you and I were talking kind of as we warmed up and got prepared for this interview. And I'm like, I don't think there's an organization out there that would, say that they're not trying to advance in some of these spaces, right? Nobody's saying I want to do business like, as you said, like I want to do business like we did it in the 60s or the 50s. Like that's not going to happen. But like, how does this relate, like AI to making data-driven decisions? Like, where's the reality in that?
Yeah. So, you're right. It's a very hot topic. Organization, right? I've not met an executive who says I don't want to be a more data-driven organization, right? I've not met an executive. We really would like to leverage AI more, okay, for all the goodness that it brings. But when you get into it and you start breaking it down, we have horrible misconceptions of what AI or think machine learning, think algorithms, really today. Artificial intelligence that you see in the movies doesn't exist today and probably will not exist for some time. We have machine learning is even in its nascent stages for all the wonderful advances that we have. But think of algorithms out there, working in the world to accomplish specific tasks. You have to break up decision making first by types. And here's where, at the highest levels, where, executives are very concerned. They're super busy and they make the statement, we want to be data driven. We want to use AI, mesh these two things together and go do good. That's not enough, right? That's not enough for a data science team to go out and do real goodness. And that becomes foul number one, that we don't define what exactly machine learning is to our organization. We don't define decision types and how they happen. So you have, think of it as multiple spectrums, if you will, long right to left. On one end of the spectrum is is what we call low order decisions, or decisions that require low degrees of complex reasoning to accomplish. Think of ordering paper for the office. Right, an algorithm could do that very quickly. How many reams did we use last month? How many reams did we use in the last 3 or 4 months? Regression analysis. We used 30 last month, order 31 this month. The human brain takes that and says, got it done, moving on. Right? Okay. So we accept low order decisions very easily. We don't think twice about them. But then you go to the other end of the continuum and think of high order decisions, decisions that require high degrees of complex reasoning. Think of strategy, formulation in the C-suite. Think of mergers and acquisitions, and so could we do we use data? Do we use analytics for there? Sure, absolutely. But there's where it runs afoul real quick. And what you find is as you go along this spectrum, we readily accepted with low order ones that it gets progressively harder and harder and harder. And at the highest end, right, that where C-suite decisions are made, where decisions using complex reasoning that the human brain does beautifully and that machine learning does not quite yet, right? Our current forms of machine learning do not tackle complex reasoning nearly as well as the human brain does. So we find tremendous resistance there, but that's arguably where the most important decisions are made. So what we find is the lowest order of important decisions, we readily accept data analytics and the recommendation of an engine, but at the highest order, we resist them to the nines. And we see that in the anecdotal evidence. The senior executive, no one's going to tell me how to do strategy.
Yeah.
I don't care what the damn computer says. I know how to do mergers and acquisitions, right? You even see that even in sales organizations, much less so, right? Because sales, accounting, finance have really embraced metrics and measures and analytics. But when I had a time with a director of sales about 2 years ago. And we did a ton of data science on it, had all kinds of recommendations, and built a series of algorithms to find opportunities, in Salesforce data, right, which many companies use. And when the recommendations came back, the executive looked at all the findings, and he said, "I don't care what it says. No one's going to tell me how to run my sales organization." And you're sitting there looking at it, well, but these could be genuine opportunities, and I don't care what it says. Thank you very much. But no one tells me. I know my organization, right? And we dig ourselves in. It's like, wow. And all of that is a series of complex interactions in the brain. And that's where the neuroscience comes in, that we tend to approach data-driven decision-making, whether at the low end or the high end, whether at speed and scale, right? With fully automated AI-driven decisions. Think of recommendation engines, on Amazon or Netflix, that type of thing, to execution of reordering of goods, right? Fully automated in most places. No one is sitting there typing in, "Order me 5 more carburetors for our manufacturing line."
Right.
It's all done through ERP systems, fully automated. Now, a human can intercede at points, but generally speaking, that's all fully automated. Think of algorithmic trading on the New York Stock Exchange, right? The overwhelming majority of all trading done is algorithmically. So what you have is algorithms against algorithms, right? And rare. I mean, we still have traders out there, but if you're sitting at home today, trying to beat the stock market on your laptop, good luck beating the algorithm, right? It just rarely happens. So it becomes this huge problem of type of decision. Where does AI fit into the overall business model? Can we define where we want that greatest impact to be? Face to face, right? Business to the customer, or do we want it to be with much more important, higher decisions in the C-suite? So that's one of those very first painful conversations that you have to have when someone says, "We want to be data driven and we really want to incorporate AI into all of our decision cycles, except mine here in the C-suite."
And so I get it. And I get and I get some of the hesitation, especially depending on the organization, depending on I'll just use the word legacy, right? Even legacy systems, legacy technology, not even related to AI. I mean, legacy CRMs, whatever we want to say, right?
Right.
So it's hard sometimes to maneuver larger organizations. I guess my question would be, though, on this continuum that you spoke of, which, by the way, I think it's a great way to think of it. So going from, the lower level decision making to the higher level decision making and strategy. So as we kind of explore what that continuum looks like, I mean, you've been in this field for a long time. Would you say that as the technology has progressed, like the ability for organizations, maybe forward-looking organizations, or let's just say, I won't say early adopters, but those that adopt AI at a higher frequency, would you say that the technology is matching kind of this ability to allow organizations to allow kind of more adoption at that higher strategy level, or it doesn't even have to be at the highest level of strategy, but it's like it's moving in the right direction on this continuum? Would you say that's accurate, or am I off?
Well, a little of both, right? The intelligent answer is it depends. So let me tell you. So one, the technology is enabling all of that. The organization and the individual, one of the great failings in data-driven decision making was we approached it from I'm going to say the data science end, right? Not to diminish its importance in any way.
Sure.
We have to get the accuracy and precision down. You have to pick the right regression model, right? All these good things, but business intelligence experts, people designing dashboards, there's a great foul there. And we're just learning this in the last, 10 years or so, as we get an understanding of exactly how the human brain makes decisions. If you looked in the past, we focused on, getting tons of data, making sure it was accurate, precise, filled in. We built the data models. We threw it in a data lake. We experimented with it all. Then we threw it into these pretty visual analytics, right? And we applied design principles to it. And there are all kinds of seminal people in this, and phenomenal work for their time, right? Gestalt's principles of design. Things should flow in certain ways. It should be separated. Tufte, Edward Tufte, the father of visual analytics, with his data density ratios, and everything should speak to the data, right? Should be no space that doesn't speak to the data. All those things were fantastic, and they helped us build better dashboards. But they actually didn't improve decision making. I had a wonderful chat right before COVID hit a couple years ago with a executive vice president of one of the big self-service BI companies, and his salesperson said, "Yeah, we've increased our color palette from 2.5 million to whatever 5.5 million colors now, right? So your pie chart can be that exact hue of blue that you like, right?" And I raised my hand. I said, "Well, but how does that actually make us? How do we make better decisions from that?" And
so I think is that still focused on maybe visibility versus decision making?
What we now know, what we have learned in the last 10, 12 years, is that the human brain is structured in certain ways and functions in certain ways that make all of those things absolutely, they're important, but they're not as critical. So the way so let's take just one part of the human brain. So the human brain has two systems that are paramount important in decision making. Okay, the limbic system, which controls decision making, trust, feelings. Okay, but not language. So the limbic system actually controls the decision-making process, but it's all about trust and it's all about feelings, but it can't articulate what it's doing. Another system that functions in coordination with it and in competition with it is the neocortex. And the neocortex is responsible for all of our analytic thought and language, but has no capacity for decision-making. So the part of the brain that does analytic thought can speak, so it can say, well, these numbers don't match up to these numbers here, but but it doesn't make decisions. The part of the brain that makes decisions is all about language and feeling. Okay, so but it can't speak. So when you see that senior officer raise their hand and they've been looking at all the data,
gut, right?
And they say, "I get it, what you're saying, but it just doesn't feel right. We're going to go with my gut." That's the tangible output, the visible output of those two systems, both competing and cooperating at all times, and the human brain does it absolutely seamlessly. So, and then you get into specific types of decisions that you can do very fast ones. So Daniel Kahneman, in his seminal work, Think It Fast, Thinking Slow, talked about system one, rapid decision making. Okay, thin slicing. The book Blink popularized it, versus the system two, much slower, deliberate thought. So it becomes this very complex thing. But so when we look at this data, and we say, make a data-driven decision making, make a data-driven decision, and the data is precise, the data is accurate, the colors are what you like, the visual analytics are what they are. We've seamlessly applied these design principles, so it's aesthetically beautiful and it flows, and hierarchically it's great. And people still say, but it doesn't feel right. And I've learned in my 30-year career as an executive not to ignore my gut. So we're going with my gut. So all of those things. So no matter how well we build out the technology, no matter how sophisticated the algorithms are, no matter how precise the data is, etc., you can't get around these intractable equations in the brain, or intractable relationships. And there's other parts to it. If you want to just a touch deeper, in the 1960s, a Russian psychologist by the name of Paul Yarbus conducted a series of experiments on a painting. Okay, And he had people take a look at this painting and then go away from it. And he tracked their eye movements, which back in the 1960s was no minor thing. Today we can get eye trackers, and we run these same experiments on dashboards, and when an executive is willing, and you can see their eye movements all over the screen. What are they looking at? How much time are they spending on there? But what Yarbus discovered at the time was brilliant. We not only interrogate data differently, right? Marty's going to do it differently than Adam. That's a no-brainer. Okay, we're different people, different experiences. What he discovered is we not only all interrogate data differently, but we all interrogate data based on predetermined desired outcomes of that data. Wow. So when I say I'm looking at this data neutrally, right? I'm going to make a data-driven decision. No, I'm not. Now, if you're a trained scientist, you can do that for short periods of time, but it's still very difficult, right? And every, scientists, executives, we all make this mistake. We all have preferences. We all have bias. We all have a very heuristics, ways that we manage a very complex world. We make rapid decisions, and we all make decision errors. And there are about 200 listed decision errors in the body of knowledge. So when you get people together and you say, we're looking at this data, it's beautifully designed, what you have to realize is that no matter how sophisticated the technology, no matter how sophisticated the data science, no matter how well it's presented, the human brain is still structured in certain ways to make decisions based on analysis. And we all are prone to going towards the desired outcome of that data. Yeah, there's a long-winded speech that most people just don't care to hear, because what we want to hear is that, yeah, give me the data and I'll make a neutral decision and good, and we can move on.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about, some of the shortcomings of kind of making these data-driven decisions, and where, how the brain and neuroscience relates to it. I'm curious, just from your perspective, because you've seen a lot of different organizations. So on that continuum, so, on the extreme end of somebody being, using and making really good data-driven decisions up to the strategy level using AI, like what are some of the traits of organizations, or it could even be leaders, like wherever you want to take that, of organizations that are actually, kind of succeeding on that side of things? Like, what are some of the traits that you've seen?
Yeah, wow. One, they take the time up front to define what they want to get out of those data-driven decisions, right? Do we want it to function at the point of sale? Okay. Do we want it to function at the midpoint? Reordering.
Like, what's the outcome?
How do the desirable strategic outcomes of using artificial intelligence, using algorithms, and making data-driven decisions, how do they support our strategic goals and objectives, right? You start with that, here's what we want to achieve. Here's where we're headed organizationally for the next year, 5 years, here are the big things we want to achieve. And then within that, within that IT and data strategy, there should be an AI component, an analytics component. And we have to very specifically map those things there, right? Because if you want to increase sales by, pick a number, 25% over the next year, and we want machine learning to be a part of it, that's a very different use case that a data science team will tackle, and how we will tackle that, versus saying, we're going to have 4 M&As in the next year, and we really need data to support a human-centric process of decision making there. Those are very different use cases, and so you have to do your work up front and say, how is this going to be? The worst thing I have ever seen happen in organizations is when it becomes platitudes, and they say, well, we're going to be an AI driven organization, and from the top levels, it's not defined to the data scientists. What exact outcomes do we want from the data science and visualization efforts? They say, well, you figure it out. You're smart people. True, but we have no idea what you want. Well, I don't know what I want. Go do good things. Make me money with artificial intelligence. Make me money through better decisions. That abdication of leadership at the top just doesn't work well. But then that's, why I have a job, because I help those conversations, translate from okay, here's what machine learning can do. I mean, that's the other part. People don't understand what can machine learning actually do. And that's not make us more money. That's the outcome of all the good things that machine learning can do for us. But machine learning does not make you more money. So you've got to break that thing down, and those are painful processes there. And there's where many times your C-suite officers can't talk to the engineers and the data science team because it's just too darn painful. We need to increase sales by 25%. And you guys are asking all these ugly questions when I'm paying you, obscene amounts of money, in machine learning, and figure it out. Man, go figure it out. And those type of efforts end in disaster.
Yeah. And what's interesting about this is as we look at different parts of a business, just to kind of juxtapose, like you wouldn't do that with marketing. You wouldn't do that with a new product design or development, or like you're launching something completely new. Like leadership's not going to say, "Oh, just go figure it out." Like that's not going to happen. So like, how can you expect to do the same thing when it comes to data science or anything of that nature, like or AI, and how you're going to make like higher level strategy decisions? So I can see how mentally this would happen. Like they look at then they've maybe had some success in having that conversation and saying, "Hey, Marty, just go figure it out to order us better paper, right? Or order paper on time." And so for the lower level, maybe decision making, correct me if I'm wrong, that may have worked for a time, but as you go up in that strategy continuum, like it takes more and more involvement, because you have to pre-plan what the desired outcome is so that you can actually make a real decision. And then at the end of the day, you're not kind of pulling the plug, going with your gut. Not saying the gut wasn't right. Maybe sometimes it is, but it's not adding to your tool set of being able to make a real data driven decision utilizing AI, which would be the ultimate goal.
Yeah. And so there's where the differences happen, right? I've worked with numerous marketing directors, and they are very often very, very good about accepting data, right? Yeah. But again, it's accepting data. Where do we advertise? What type of advertising? Where do we hit? Social media, etc. Those are relatively not high degrees of complex reasoning. The data clearly shows if we go this way, we're going to get more returns. We're going to get the funnel, the sales funnel goes down really nicely. So they tend to do that very well. Again, it's it's when you get to the higher order stuff. Now take cyber risk. Okay, cyber become huge in the last 20 years, right? The CISOs have risen in preeminence from being somebody underneath the CIO in a really niche position, that you could push to the side when they were crying wolf that the organization was going to be brought down by horrible viruses. Pan forward 20 years, the CISO says we have a 30% chance of being brought down by ransomware this year because of our technology, and everybody stops what they're doing. Excuse me? Ransomware? Hang on, wait a minute. What are you saying here? What do we need to do to not be brought down by ransomware? All the way to the board of directors. So those type of high risk decisions, right? Which is that's personally my greatest joy, because high risk decisions are made slightly different in the brain than non-high risk decisions. Okay, and you have to structure data in ways that visualizes it in ways that enable the human brain to accept, accept the data and not just shut yourself down. And one of the realities that the greatest trick that the human brain plays on us is that it fools us into thinking that we're awake. Okay. When actually we go through the overwhelming majority of our life not being awake. We think we see, hear, smell, feel, touch everything around us, right? This huge, big world. But when you understand how the human eye moves back and forth, we're actually only seeing small slivers of our world. And we base that on what we call an internal model. And that internal model is formed in the brain in an area between the visual cortex and the thalamus. And it takes information from all kinds of things. So when we see like a dashboard, we see data, or we see things in front of us, our eyes take in a tremendous amount of information. Huge amounts of information goes through the cortex. Okay. Matter of fact, it's one of the largest systems in the brain. That goes to an organ called the thalamus, and the thalamus also pulls information from the visual cortex, what we believe to be true about the world, our beliefs. Okay. And it intermixes that information and it sends it back to be formulated into, call it a mental model, right? Mental models we all know of. From a neuroscience perspective, it's actually called the internal model. But here's the kicker. What you're seeing in front of you, what people are telling you, that information that's coming into your brain, going to mix in and update your reality of the world, the human brain takes 6 times more information of what it already believes to be true than what it's seeing with its eyes. So when they say, so I'm looking at the data, I'm looking at the dashboard, and you say, do you see everything? Do you understand everything? Yes. Well, from a scientist's perspective, it's not interesting that some people say yes. What's interesting is everyone says yes. So we've done experiments with like CISOs, and chief financial officers, and you say you present all this data in this dashboard, and you ask, you have any questions to this? Can you manage from this? Does this tell you the story accurately? Yes, I got it. 99% say I understand it. But when you turn the thing off and you say, okay, well, let's talk about the data just a little bit, and you start talking about it, huge gaps emerge. And well, wait a minute, I need to see that again. So you didn't understand it. Well, I just don't remember what's there. Okay, but you should remember some parameters of it. And again, it goes back to the human brain keeps in, call it RAM memory, about 4 items. Okay, so about 4 things we actually keep in this rapidly accessible memory. Anything more than that, we just kind of discard. And again, we think we believe we're looking and seeing and hearing everything, when actually it's a very, very small sliver. So there are lots of things that have to be done from the human side. Okay. Versus the technology or the data side. We have to pull all these things in together. I'll make a semi-prophetic statement here. Here it comes, right? If I'm wrong, my career is over, right?
I'm in. Let's do it.
Well, it's too bad I'm not a political pundit, because they get stuff wrong all the time, and then the next week they just move on and no one remembers.
True.
In my job, they pull out and say, "Wait a minute, I'm looking at this document you wrote 18 months ago. You were wrong." No, the future of data-driven decision making, especially in high risk situations, is not about the data. It's not about the machine learning. I mean, it's not about the accuracy or precision. It is. I'm not to diminish those things. It's as much about understanding the way human beings make decisions with data as it is the data itself. So I say the future of data-driven decision making is understanding the human brain. It's understanding humans, because again, I can throw all this stuff at you. It's accurate, it's precise, it's beautiful. And if it hits you the wrong way, you make your biases, your heuristics, it just does not fit with your mental model of the world, and your gut overtakes it, and you say, Marty, brilliant, absolutely lovely, love the colors. We're going to go with my gut. But that's only on some end. On other ends, especially like cybersecurity, okay, or opportunities to build, sales or impact, touch people, are very temporally specific. And today we move at cyber speed. We move at cyber speed and cyber scale. So we're turning over an increasing number of those decisions that have to be made sometimes in thousandths of a second. The future of cybersecurity is artificial intelligence, and human beings and algorithms and AI being meshed together seamlessly in this cyber physical world that we're building. So opportunities as we move towards, I personally dislike the term metaverse. I get it. And thank you, Mark, for having popularized it. But think of cyber physical systems, cyber physical world, or IoT, everything meshing together. I can't even function without my phone, and I'm wearing another device here and another device there. It's a cyber physical world. So there's all kinds of opportunities, and every company knows this, but you've got to delineate those decisions that these things are going to be fully automated. These are going to have human involvement or human, be able to interact. And then these are going to be until we get machine learning to the point where it can really tackle problems with high degrees of complex reasoning,
Absolutely.
build it all.
Man, Marty, you get me so excited about this. I'm like, as I talk to you, I'm like, man, I wish well, number one, I wish I knew more about this topic. So I'm glad to bring this information to my audience for sure. And I'm excited to see kind of the evolution. And now that I have in my mental model, as I hope my viewers do as well, this concept of this continuum of going from, simple to complex and the strategy. And now even in just my day-to-day decision making, thinking about how my biases play into something over and above just the idea of my experience and things like that, like over and above, because we have these biases, but the way that you've laid this out, I feel gives us a lot of opportunity that if we can, I won't use the word overcome these biases because maybe that's not going to happen immediately, but if we can just think of that continuum and think about how we can make better decisions, I mean, going forward, I don't think anybody intentionally is like, no, I want to make bad decisions and I want to do it over and over again. Nobody's saying that. And we're not picking at anybody today. We get that. But but in the same sense, I know I looked in the mirror as we're talking and I'm like, whoa, yeah, you know what? I get it. I understand. And there's a lot of opportunity there. So I want to use the time we have left to talk about, some of the specific, because I want you to, at the end of this, leave whatever type of contact information or websites or connect on LinkedIn, wherever you want people to continue the conversation.
Please,
because I know you're working with both large organizations, enterprise level, and I think maybe mid-size also, but give us a feel for specifically how you're helping organizations in cybersecurity, because I definitely want you to leave contact info, because we're not going to be able to peel back all this onion today. And I know there's people watching this that want more from you. So
thank you. Thank you. So right now I do an overwhelming majority of my work and did at the NSA on assessing enterprise risk. So enterprise risk management or heavy cyber, because I've spent so many years in cyber, but also data privacy. Call it information assurance is my favorite word, even though it's kind of fallen out of favor, right? But securing the enterprise, securing our data, and calculating risk, which has expanded now into like COVID risk and other things. But right now, I'm only working with very, very large organizations. It seems to be the trend. But mid-sized organizations I have done in the past, and they're just wonderful because you can make such impact. But it seems that the larger companies is where, if they can improve decision making by 5%. It can yield, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars, right? I mean, a bad M&A can really sink you. Increasing sales by, 20% over the next year and a half, 2 years. Oh my God, it's billions of dollars. Where this gets very practical, it can be on the strategy side, but it can be on the very tactical side as well. All these things, people will sometimes ask me, okay, great, doctor, this is, you've talked a lot of pie in the sky here. What do we really do, right, that's going to put bread on the table? And so you say, okay, well, let's go back again into align, AI and algorithms and things to the outcomes. And sometimes it's very simple things like minimizing the use of certain types of analytics, pie charts, for example. The human brain has great difficulty ascribing quantitative value to two-dimensional spaces, The same with arc lengths. And you see analytics designed like this, and they've got this beautiful arc length. It's a gorgeous analytic, but how exactly do we determine a value to an arc length? And the brain has, very, very difficult time doing this. Color is not associated with the quantitative value. Minimal use of colors on executive level dashboards. Very true. Understanding how memory works, right? When we present data temporally, something will flood executives with data, tons of data all bloody day long, right? And with no idea of understanding of how memory functions, how it is structured in the human brain, right? Memory is not a precise recall of every last detail. It's a meshing of neurons in the brain, because we only have so many. They disjoint. We have to go back and recall events. So the degree of contextual data being provided to executives at certain times based on their psychology. We're exploring, one of the companies in Silicon Valley that I work with, we're exploring I'm going to call it a new type of artificial intelligence. And it's being called augmented cognitive intelligence, or ACI. And think of it as the Air Force is developing what they call loyal wingman, drones to fly in association with the plane. And everything the plane does, the two drones augment that. Think of this artificial intelligence being specific to Adam. It knows your biases. It knows how you make decisions. It knows what time a day you like to see certain data, the velocity of that data, the type of analytics you like to see.
Wow.
It even understands your state and trait psychology. Marty's a highly conscientious person, but maybe more neurotic. Adam is not. So it's going to understand and compensate for those things for me, determining my biases, determining how I make decisions, and compensating. So we're never going to get rid of these things, but we might be able to minimize them and make better decisions going forward. And that, the impact of that, the potential to that is absolutely huge. And that has nothing to do with even the new things that we're looking at. Data will not only be seen, it will be felt in the future. Okay. So there are experiments going on today, like in Wall Street, with electrovibral and tactile devices on the skin, that pulses of data are being felt, because we know the human brain will grow new neural connections to interpret new forms of data. So in 10 years, you might see cyber teams spread out on the floor and a bunch of wearable devices on them. And instead of saying, I see something bad with the computer popping up, what's going to happen is an analyst is going to say, I feel something is wrong. And then they're going to go to the AI and converse with the AI, and whatever the AI's name is, Vicky, I feel something is wrong with this telemetry data. And the AI is also, a large neural net is monitoring that as well. And you'll have the seamless mating of humans and computers in a new form of artificial intelligence. Or I'm just crazy.
No, this is exciting, Marty. I'm in and I'm excited. I want to feel the data as well. I'm throwing that out there. I want to feel the data. I just want to feel that something's up, and then we can dig further. So if somebody's watching this and they want to connect and they want to continue the dialogue, how do people follow your work?
Yeah, I am on LinkedIn, and please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Connect to me on LinkedIn, it's basically Marty, Marty Trevino, risk science, or risk data science. But I am on there, and don't hesitate to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I will have a conversation with anybody, and if I can help in any way, I'm happy to. Honored.
It's awesome. And we'll put the link in the show notes as well, so our audience can just click on it and head right on over. And again, continue the conversation. And speaking of the audience, if this is the first time that you've ever watched Mission Matters or engaged with the platform, just so you know, we're a platform that's all about bringing on entrepreneurs, executives, experts, bringing on people that have a message and a mission to share with the world, and that are out there in the marketplace trying to make a difference. If that's the type of content that you're into or that you find interesting, we definitely welcome you to hit that subscribe button, because we have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line, and we don't want you to miss a thing. And Marty, really, it has been a pleasure. I learned a ton today. I hope my audience did as well. And thank you again for coming on the show.
No, thank you, Adam. It's been my pleasure. Everybody have a wonderful day out there. Do good.